The National Weather Service has upgraded Joaquin from a tropical storm to a hurricane, and it is forecasting additional strengthening of winds. Here with a look at Joaquin's potential impact is WeatherBELL Analytics Chief Meteorologist Joe Bastardi. Joe, thanks for joining us. Let's start with a look at Hurricane Joaquin. Where is it right now, and what's its trajectory?
Well, first of all, let me explain. I'm out of my office. I was visiting the assistant wrestling coach at Penn State. I happen to have my computer. That's why you see me decked out like this. But in any case, I just wanted to explain that. I'm not my usual garb. Joaquin, first of all, yesterday, the day before, we said this was going to get to a Category 3. We weren't monkeying around with it on WeatherBELL, and we brought it back to the Bahamas. I think it's coming all the way into the central Bahamas. I think it's going to spare Nassau. But places like Long Island, not the Long Island in New York. I don't want people to panic. But Long Island in the Bahamas, Eleuthera, places like that. This thing is really going to be a very bad hurricane, probably the worst since Irene and even worse than Sandy, which went through there also. And it shares in common with those two storms the threat on the eastern seaboard. So it's a big ticket item. And there are other things going on besides the storm. There's going to be a nor'easter in front of it. With 3-4 days of east to northeast gales piling up water into the mid-Atlantic beaches before this thing comes up. So there is a potential here. In the worst case scenario, this could be as bad for the mid-Atlantic states as what Sandy was further northeast. Now, that's the worst case scenario.
Wow, that's pretty strong. Well, Joe, what days are we looking at for the East Coast if it does hit the East Coast of the U.S.?
Well, first of all, we're going to start with the gales out of the northeast Friday, Saturday into Sunday. But if the storm's coming, and I say if because there's a way it can escape, and I'll explain that in a second. If it gets caught, it's coming Sunday into Monday. And the track would be such, I wrote something several years ago and for the insurance companies called the Philadelphia story, where you'd actually see a storm surge come up Delaware Bay from the southeast because of a strong hurricane hitting from the southeast. And I don't think this thing is going to weaken on its way northward. I think it's getting to a Category 3, worst case Category 4, and it's going to hold on to intensity probably till Sunday. There is a way out, though, and it's very unusual because we have a trough of low pressure in the central Atlantic. There's a big blocking high that's blocking the storm from getting out now. But believe it or not, while we always look to the west for steering, what's coming from the east and what's happening to the south of the storm could actually change the pattern enough where instead of taking that left turn and coming up the eastern seaboard, turns right and stays out to sea. And it's just a big nor'easter for a few days on the eastern seaboard anyway. So it's a very, very tough weather situation. Not as obvious to me as Sandy, which Sandy you can see it coming, at least for me, quite a ways away. But this one is a lot tougher. There is a big threat, though, on that mid-Atlantic coastline.
So we need to stay on alert. Joe, how would you characterize hurricane season so far?
Well, it's a Simon and Garfunkel season where you had sounds of silence so far, but now we have this ridge of high pressure over troubled water. That's a little weather humor there. This is the season we described at the beginning in close action. We saw, just like 2012, we had two tropical storms hit early in the season, and then what came at the end of the season, and it got stronger the further north it went. We knew that the deep tropics would be dead almost completely, but it's further north that's a big problem because of the very, very warm water off the eastern seaboard of the United States. And listen, once you get north of 25 north, folks, the El Nino is not a factor. It's a factor in the deep tropics, but what we're seeing in the western Atlantic now between sea surface temperatures and the surface weather pattern that's been setting up, this is classic as to the way the eastern seaboard gets affected. So it's not a surprise at all. And as a matter of fact, I've been saying over the last 3-4 weeks, for those follow me on Twitter and even some of the other outlets, I've said, I can't believe we're going to get out of this season without a major threat on the eastern seaboard, and this may indeed be it.
Well, Joe, when would we know? By Friday, whether those eastern conditions are going to steer it away?
I believe I'm going to know that by tomorrow. I may even know it this afternoon. You got to understand, this is more a fork in the road type thing, and it's a matter of trying to figure out which angle it's going to take. Now, right now, our forecast is, and I forecast not to be less wrong, but to try to be right. I've chosen that left path, and we've had, since yesterday, a landfalling hurricane on the mid-Atlantic coast, and we still do near the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. So, and you see the Hurricane Center has been adjusting their track a bit further west on each of their outputs.
So we're going to be watching carefully. Joe, thank you so much for all that.
All right, you enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
Thanks so much.